Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. This is the June 11th, 2015 meeting of the East Fishkill Town Board. This is what's known as a work session. In a work session, it's just a time where the town board can assemble in public as per public open meetings law, and we can discuss matters of importance to the town. So there is no dialogue with the public. It's just for us to meet and discuss matters of town importance. And tonight we will be meeting with our Zoning Board of Appeals because a few months ago a comment was made that our town board members would like to meet our other boards, so we're very proud to have you. We did this about 5 years ago, and it's good to see all the boards again. With that being said, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. A couple of announcements for tonight. As everybody knows, we had a devastating fire at our favorite local hardware store, William Tell, a few weeks ago. And I was remiss, because it happened at night. I heard the alarms go off at 11 o'clock at night. And I was told that Franco's Deli the next morning supplied the firefighters with food, something like 50 or 100 ham and egg sandwiches or whatever, bacon and egg sandwiches. I think Dunkin' Donuts supplied coffee and food. And I just wanted to point that out that, Franco's, Dunkin' Donuts, and I don't know if there's any other vendors that stepped up, but I want to thank them and make that be known because that's so important to what we do here as a town. And when somebody has a problem, somebody's in trouble, for our local stores to step up and help, just by providing food and drink to our volunteer firefighters do a great job. I think it's very important to recognize them. So I did want to recognize Dunkin' Donuts and Franco's, and if I've missed any others, was that? And the Dog House. The Dog House supplied food also. I appreciate that. I was just corrected. There was the Dog House next door. So very, very important, and thank you again, because this is really what makes East Fishkill what I think a very, very, very good community, everybody pitching in. So I want to thank Franco's Deli, the Dog House, and Dunkin' Donuts. Also, speaking of thanking people, I did want to thank Girl Scout Troop 10428 for the work that they've done over at the community center. We have a garden at the community center. Walk my dog every day over there. And about a few weeks ago, I noticed that there's people working in the garden, and what a difference they made. They cleaned the garden, and they planted new vegetables. So I did want to thank Girl Scout Troop 10428 for all of their work. Ed Martinelli, he was the senior gardener at the community center. Cadet leader Lisa Chanowski, and Laurel Riley Brown from Kohl's department store, who donated much of the materials and stuff to help this project happen. So I want to thank them all very much. The garden really is nice. And also, one last thing I did want to mention, our East Fishkill Historic Society, we just had our Strawberry Festival. Malcolm and Joy Mills always do so much work, and the Historic Society, I was over there Sunday, and beautiful weather, very nice Strawberry Festival. And I got to tell you, now that we have the blacksmith shop, we have the ice house, we have the barn with the carriage barn, we have the schoolhouse, and we have the old house, I think we have to have in East Fishkill one of the best historic sites in Dutchess County, and it's just very impressive. I want to thank them and commend them on all their work. That being said, that's the end of my announcements for tonight. As I said, opening, we're going to meet our zoning board tonight. And something that we've done a few years ago, I met all the boards. We met the Architecture Review Board, probably 4 weeks ago. So thank you for the zoning board for coming back. Our zoning board is Norma Drummond, our chairwoman. We have James Meyer. Aziz is not with us tonight, I see.
He's out of town.
Oh, he's out of town. Aziz is one of our members. Tara Franco, Tara's with us. Barbara Barossa, and Mary Seminare is our alternate. And, I hate to bring you guys back here after your very, very late night the other night, but as we watched the zoning board meeting, I stayed up as long as I could, and you guys all stayed up a lot longer. I want to thank you for all your work, because I think you do a terrific job, and the cases where the projects brought for you really give a lot of thought into your decisions, and I want to thank you for that. But with that, I just wanted to open it up to the board, and if you'd like to say anything or ask any of our Zoning board members, questions? Or just say hi?
Well,
Anybody?
I'm the liaison, and thank you all for all your hard work. Is there anything over the years that you've been on the board that you think we could be more efficient by, if we could pass any laws or do anything different? Procedures, maybe?
Well, if I may also, and
I'm sure that you have something.
well,
Be shy.
also to that end, I would say, when I took a lot of zoning classes years ago, and they always said, if you see a lot of variances, you're doing a lot of variances, let your town board know, because maybe we need to change the law instead of
Right.
you granting variances. So do you have any procedural or any thoughts?
I'll get you started.
Shit? Oh, we're going to get Jim started now?
No, well, the group, actually.
Oh, the whole group,
We
okay,
actually did
okay.
take the time, even though I think they ran out of DVDs, we did take the time the other evening to actually have a little bit of discussion in anticipation of this evening. And so one of the things we did talk about was those variances that tend to come to us more frequently than others.
Right.
One of the issues is the fact that many of the applications that come to us are after the fact. And what might we do better education to the public to help them to understand what needs a permit, what doesn't need a permit, where sheds are supposed to go, where they're not supposed to go. We're having a lot of issues right now with pools, and this is certainly the time of year that,
Yes.
people are installing more pools.
And that's a very good point. Two things I'd like to say. Maybe what I would do is we can have a Channel 22 program on, and invite our building inspector up, and maybe Norma, if you want to be, or members of your board, and we can talk about the things that are needed.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because especially now, you're mentioning pools, and we were just talking about that the other day. Should we make it necessary for them to have a survey when you get a pool installed? I mean, maybe, because it seems like a lot of it is just, oh, we thought it went there, we didn't
Right.
realize, Unfortunately, when you make an investment as big as a pool, should you have to spend another $500 or $800 to have it staked out? And we're getting to that point where we're considering that actually may be something we're going to have to put into law, because, as you say, after the fact is a problem.
Right.
Certainly, on the smaller properties, that certainly is something they have to be cognizant of. But although we had one this past meeting where the guy did have a survey and found out the survey was wrong.
Oh, no kidding.
5 feet off.
Wow.
So for the time he put the pool in, he
Yeah,
was
yeah,
required
yeah.
distance away, but no, he's
Wow.
not. So it's not always the panacea, but I
No.
think, for somebody with a large piece, I mean, one of the ones we dealt with, I think if they put it where they showed it on the plan, there would not have been an issue. The property was big enough.
Right,
If you're
right.
not gonna put it there, then that's an issue.
Well, I think probably, Jim, what you see with that is they go out with the pool contract, say, I want the pool here. And then they would get down to doing that, the guy finds, oh, my septic is here, and I have to shift it over, and you could see. But,
Yeah, but some of these
Yeah.
shifts are pretty significant.
pretty significant, yes, and that's what we have to avoid. And we have to avoid it
For all
up
those
front.
reasons, yeah.
And there's,
When they get a survey, at the final point where the project is done, and they get a CO, whoever goes over, do we really look at the plans and make sure that everything's in accordance, so that
Your
we
building
don't come out?
inspector, before they issue the CC, should go out there with the plan and say, okay, this is where it was. Absolutely.
Right, but whoever,
And that may be a thing, I mean, just having a survey is one thing. Having a stake, they're gonna have a stake that you're gonna consider that, because you gotta go to the 2 points.
Yes.
That was one of the problems, they weren't quite sure what the line was, so, if your inspector goes out and says, they say, this is the line, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's 30 feet away, you tell me the line's there.
And you
They
inspect-
don't have an objective thing to say.
Right,
for
right.
the
Well,
inspector.
I mean, this is
Yeah.
part and parcel of the town. Many years ago, I had problems with foundations going in the wrong place. So now as part of the process, when the foundation is built, before they can go on, they have to have a survey submitted that shows that the foundation is in the right place. But it seems to me that with the pool situation that you've been experiencing, we probably have to have the process that on building permits for pools, that there has to not only be a survey, but there has to be stakes put in. And then there has to be an inspection at that point, and then that will catch it. Because a lot of these are caught when the building inspector goes out for the final, and and they say,
Yeah.
doesn't look like how it was drawn.
But oftentimes, people are moving them drastically from what's
Yeah,
represented
yeah.
on the plan.
And that can't happen, and that should be something noted on the building
But of course,
permit.
the problem you have with that is a survey cost for the stakes is an additional cost to the taxpayer. But on the other hand, you know, the rules are to keep the noise and things like that on their property as opposed to the neighbors.
Yeah.
My thought was, if, let's say, you can demonstrate you have 50-foot setback, maybe you don't need a survey, but if you're less than 50 feet or less than 40 feet.
Yeah, and that goes to
pick a
Jim's
number
point about the
that
smaller
You
lots.
feel comfortable with, and less than that, you gotta have a survey.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've seen the actual pools moved over as much as 10 feet
Or
from where
more.
they wrote on the
I think even
permit that
more.
they were going to put it,
I think
right?
Wow.
even more.
Or neighbors' lots.
Well, yeah,
I think even more.
amazing how that
See
happens.
that, too.
But now, also lately, we're going to be seeing the pool equipment.
Yes, which has got to be
Companies are
understood.
forgetting that the pool equipment needs to
Part
meet
of the pool,
setbacks as
yeah,
well, so.
yeah.
And we're also seeing above-ground pools where they don't go for building permits. They're
Yeah.
unaware that the above-ground pools
And
also
that
require.
always comes to us, Barbara, too. That's an as-built, and they say, that's a oops, you know, oh, we didn't know, and here it is, and they come to you guys.
But they're also getting that advice from the pool companies, so maybe we need to also reach out to the pool companies in the area so that they abide by the
Yeah, yeah.
rules set forth here, that they don't give the homeowners wrong information.
Right, right. Oh, good point.
But, you know, they do come in for the permit, and the permit clearly has the rules and regulations right on it if they.
But for those who
They
don't
read
come in,
it.
right, because there have been applicants who said, oh, the pool guy said I didn't need one.
Oh, in that case.
So
yeah.
that's where I mean that
But how do you reach out to those people? Sound like not
They
you
know.
or...
Yeah, yeah. Oh, don't worry, you don't need a permit for that.
Yeah.
So that's where better
One of the
education.
bigger companies was here the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
night,
yeah.
that
And that's
something
my
got
point,
put in the
and
wrong
that's my
place.
point, not read the language right on the face of the
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's where better education maybe for the public
Right.
comes
yeah,
in, right?
yeah.
Yeah, helping young people understand what's allowed,
Yeah,
where,
yeah.
what needs a permit, what doesn't need a permit.
Scott,
Really.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
At the building inspector, at the building department, is it possible for, you know, people that come in for applications, if they have a hard time understanding all the details, that maybe we could facilitate
Well, we
really
try,
telling
you
them?
know, the girls, the ladies at the counter definitely try to explain any questions that are asked, you know, or even ask, do you have any questions? Some people walk in, turn around and walk out, other people ask questions.
Yeah.
In fact, we were just talking the other day, a problem that we've been having is when people come in to do some work themselves on the house, they just do a little sketch of what they're going to do. And it's become problematic, so Scott and I were talking, Scott's going to have to institute a checklist for minimum amount of information that must be shown on the sketch. If it's a big enough addition that requires a
Stamp
set
plan.
of steel plans, you get all of that because the architect or engineer puts it on it, but the homeowner comes in and the directive says you must have a sketch, so people draw it out, but they're forgetting some significant information. So we're now going to do a checklist, like a minimum requirements, and give that to the applicants.
Well, and to the extent that we could put some more information on the website, frequently asked questions.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
good.
that would
Oh, that is
certainly-
good.
People are getting more and more
Yeah.
used to the fact that, let me check it out online first.
Right,
As
right.
opposed to needing to go into the office and, you know, how many times a day do the ladies down there have to answer the same question?
Yeah,
So-
right.
Oh, that's a good point, Norma. Yeah,
So a second issue that came up
okay.
is we're getting a lot of requests for 6-foot fences in front of the rear line of the house. And so one of the issues that we've discussed is we're not sure why the rear line is so important
Yeah.
as opposed to allowing it to be in line with the front line of the house.
Yeah.
Because you've got air conditioning equipment on the
Yeah,
side of the house,
yeah.
you've got
I think-
ugly
yeah.
stuff sometimes on the
That you
side of
want to
the
hide on the
house.
side.
Even oil tanks, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So
I think years ago, there was a discrepancy with what was the definition of the rear line of the house.
Okay.
Was the rear line of the house actually anything behind the front? If you had the front line of the house, anything behind that
Oh.
would be considered the rear. But then somewhere along the line, somebody decided, no, it's from the rear of the house back. I agree with you 100%. I think the rear line of the house should actually be defined as from the front line back. Anything could be considered, that would be considered the rear line. Now, I don't know if that makes sense to you.
I would
But you
say
know what I
anything beyond
mean?
the front of the house.
Because
yeah.
that hides everything from the front line
Yeah.
back, and that hides your air conditioners. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I think at some point, probably many years ago, that was the definition, and then it changed. Said, oh no, the rear of the house. and then you got that ugly stuff on the side.
Right.
So that's something I think we do need to address, if that helps you out.
Maybe not
It could be
only,
just a matter of interpretation of what rear line is somewhere along the lines too, as
What is
opposed
defined.
to a new statute.
It's
I
now
think it's the
line.
rear of the,
To the line of the rear.
That may also lend itself to, for instance, sheds, pools, other structures, because
Exactly,
not
so a
every
shed,
property, topography lends itself to a pool or a shed in the back, where maybe they got property on the side, and with that 6-foot fence,
Right.
they can shield it.
Well, that's actually the thing. The pool, as interpreted now, is allowed in the side lot, so.
yes.
But
Good
a shed
point.
isn't. The
But
garage
shed,
is,
yeah.
but a shed isn't.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. There's a little
Good
bit of
point.
discrepancy there. so.
Yeah, yeah. So probably just changing the definition of rear line would help quite a bit. And I think that, I agree with you, it would hide all that stuff. So,
I mean, some people's patios are right on the side of their house, their
Yeah.
kitchen or whatever it is.
Yes.
Family room opens out onto the side of their home.
yeah, yeah.
So it would let them enjoy their yards
Yeah.
better, especially since some of our homes people don't have a large backyard.
No,
See, it's odd to me. You got these grand
Yeah.
houses that sit back 200 feet from the front line.
Yeah.
They got 20 feet.
and you got no backyard.
I don't get it, but they're doing
And it's the wetlands buffer.
They're selling.
Yeah.
And another issue,
It's good to, it's really good to have,
Don't
it's
worry.
good to have the zoning board in, you know what I mean?
Over to get to a favorite. She hasn't mentioned
Oh, not the favorite. She's
We're
waiting,
not done
she's
yet.
waiting for the end.
Yes, Barbara?
another thing we see a lot of is corner lots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Definition.
I'm sorry, could you speak to the microphone?
Corner lots.
Yeah.
We define anything with, both sides are considered front yard. So if someone has frontage on two streets,
Yeah.
they aren't allowed anything on either side.
Well, they were allowed to pick what they decide. If they have a corner lot, they're allowed to decide which is going to be their rear yard, correct? No, in a
Not
corner,
according to the building department.
on a corner lot, I always thought it was that they would
We had to meet
decide.
the setbacks for all of the sides that have
Oh,
frontage.
really?
And we actually hit one lot that came to us for a variance that it had roads on 4 sides.
Wow,
Yeah.
no kidding. So they had to have full frontage
50
on
foot
all
setbacks
sides?
on all sides.
Yeah, all setbacks on all sides.
Yeah, it was a lot that
Wow.
needed a variance about whether it would
Okay.
be a buildable lot.
Yeah.
Because it didn't meet the full acre. Had roads on all 4 sides. So,
So they've got a 10-foot square building.
yeah, the buildable area
75
left.
feet.
Yeah, it was only about this big.
Buildable area was like 30 by 60.
They built an elevator.
Sitting there.
And so, but, in considering it, one of the things we said was if we approve this, they're going to come back to the zoning board for everything they're going to want to do in their yard.
They're going to have to, yeah. They have no
So-
choice, yeah.
But,
And it may be something, if we're going to consider that they pick it at the time the house is built.
Exactly.
or the developer picks
Yeah.
it, somebody picks it.
Yeah,
finds it.
yeah.
Or
what I'm
if it's
saying.
based off of the orientation of the house, the front of the house.
The front door, driveway,
is the-
yeah. Okay.
I have a question, if you don't mind. First, thank you very much for all that you guys do. We really appreciate it. I was able to stay up to probably around 11 o'clock on Tuesday's meeting before I passed out. But having watched them in the past, those meetings really are not uncommon. Would you guys be open to having 2 zoning board meetings a month rather than 1? Maybe
Yeah,
we
I'm
can
not-
get people in a little bit more, in and out.
Well, the planning board has 2 meetings a month. Would that be something you'd like to entertain, or would that be something you'd like to entertain on an
This way we
as-needed
can-
basis?
We can prevent
As
as-needed basis.
Because when you see
Because I-
something coming down the
You know
road,
that it's going to be, you probably knew that it was going to be a late night.
Oh, the
I
other
knew it-
night?
yeah,
Oh,
I knew it was gonna
absolutely.
be a late night.
Yeah,
We all
absolutely.
did.
And we know the next one's going to be a late night.
So
Yeah.
maybe we can have perhaps
Like
a
a
special
station.
one. This way, it's
yes,
just,
yes.
right, so
So
then,
for example, when they come in on the review, for example, for a while it was rather quiet.
Yeah,
We were
it
getting
has
out
been.
early. Then all of a sudden, was
It's-
it 2 months ago, we had reviews of like 20 reviews.
27.
Got warm.
Yeah, 27. So we could say, this is adjourned to our meeting of the first
Such and
Tuesday, or maybe the fourth, or the second
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Tuesday.
if you remember, the
seasonal.
last one on last time was selling their house and needed to close by June 30th. Remember that? So you hesitate to hold somebody off when it impacts them financially. So it could be that what we might need to consider is special meetings for the bigger topics.
Yes, yes.
All right? Stewart's might deserve its own meeting.
It could, it very
All
well could,
right?
sure.
The issue we're dealing with right
Right.
now with the special permit in the Four Corners that probably deserved its own meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so,
Just so we can
I
prevent the
think I'm
12:31
saying the same
club.
thing. When
Yeah.
we see that we have 25, 30 reviews, and we're going to put them on for the next meeting,
right.
if we have that option, instead of putting them on all for the second Tuesday,
Right.
to pick the fourth Tuesday, then we could do that on an as-needed
Yeah,
basis.
yeah, that's something, I mean, planning board is what, first and third?
Right.
What's planning board, first and third,
Or
so you
second.
guys could fit the second and fourth. That'd actually not work too badly, and that'll give you the option to have that extra time.
Yeah, we could consider the fourth Tuesday as.
Yeah, as your
Like a cell
alternate.
tower, again, is another one that.
Yes,
you know,
yes, yes.
We just need to schedule that really and deal with it all at once.
Exactly, so that'd make your life a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But otherwise, I mean, generally speaking, the topics are,
It's seasonal.
it's definitely seasonal. It's, as people start thinking about what they're going to do for the summer, oh my gosh, I got to go get,
Yep,
I
yeah.
want a permit, and then they get told, no, you need a variance. So,
Yeah.
there are certain times of the year where there's many things on there, and then other times when,
it's a breeze.
And I was hopeful this is a sign of the economy picking up.
Yeah, yeah, I know, we've been
People wanna
waiting.
do things.
just
Right.
imagine, we don't even do signs anymore. Imagine how long it would have gone if we still
Oh,
had
my
signs.
goodness.
So,
Yeah, yeah. All right.
yes. So, Tom, did we answer your question? or-
Yes.
Okay, so
And
next.
I think we'll consider that, correct? And we'll talk with Pam,
Yeah,
and
that's
we'll
fine.
consider that to be the option if needed. You could, book for the fourth Tuesday. That'd be a good idea.
So one of the next topics that we had a discussion about was chickens and poultry.
Yeah, chickens and poultry.
And we just don't understand why
10 acres.
you need 10 acres
Yeah.
for one chicken, but
Yeah.
you only need 2 acres
For
for
a
one
horse.
horse.
This goes
So-
back to 1963 when zoning was actually enacted, and I always said that somebody didn't like chickens,
Right.
but they liked horses. Absolutely. But what we're seeing now to that is that the chickens, people are actually using the chickens, the eggs to be more healthy, and we get this quite a bit.
And the ticks, exactly.
And the ticks too, and I'd have no problem changing the law to change that. But the chicken isn't really the problem,
It's
the
the
roosters.
rooster, yeah.
The rooster's the problem.
So we might need to define poultry a little bit better,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
make the distinction about
Yeah,
what
yeah.
could be allowed and.
Yeah, you need 10
what
acres
not.
for one rooster, okay?
Well, maybe,
Right.
Or you need to be 200 feet away from the closest neighbor.
It could be,
Maybe
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the way this statute became interpreted over the years may have changed again, and maybe one of those examples. I was under the impression when I first looked at it that was for people who wanted to sell their produce, whether it was eggs or vegetables.
Yeah.
Because if you read the whole statute, it also says you can't have produce, so does that mean you can't have a side garden or something for your own?
Yeah, we wouldn't, yeah.
So I think the statute probably needs to be looked at from a legal point of view to see
Yeah.
if it's really the right thing and
Yeah.
have that really scrutinized. I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm fine upholding the laws of each
Yeah,
state.
yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm not sure if somebody really took that to
To an extreme.
scrutiny that it would
Yeah.
stand up,
Okay.
speaking as a lawyer. So,
But you're not acting as an attorney?
No, but he's
I'm
not.
sitting up there. so.
All right, but I agree with you, because we're seeing a lot more of that with the chickens, and I think that would be, but the darn rooster's the problem.
Yes.
So,
We had one on my road there, and I wasn't aware of the chickens until one morning.
You heard-
Once in a while, you would hear the rooster.
you're the rooster, yeah.
And I wasn't that close, so it didn't bother me. And also, I mean, it has to be looked, I think, in terms of other pets, because right now it's sort of being that you only have the right to household pets.
Mm-hmm.
We had the guy with the pigeons, and whether that's not a household pet, so you can't have it.
Right,
I'm not
right.
sure, really, constitutional wise, whether that could be allowed to say that, what's the interest
Yeah,
of the town.
yeah. What's it?
You can't have it.
Pigeons got no
Yeah, well-
constitutional rights.
I love the way we put definitions in there. We could have a lawsuit from the roosters.
So,
Yeah.
discrimination, I mean, if they're just, those kind of things are
They're
being
male,
prohibited,
right?
I'm not sure
Oh, my
that's
gosh.
appropriate
Yeah.
either, so that has to be looked at from that point of, perspective as well, I think.
Okay.
So that
Sounds
brings.
good.
To your
I know, I was
favorite,
gonna say,
Final,
that
okay,
brings
Norma,
us to,
what's the final one?
location of sheds.
Sheds.
Location of shed.
Particularly on smaller lots.
But let me ask you
Okay.
this doesn't go back to the side, the rear yard issue, does it?
It
If
goes
we-
to the side yard and the rear yard. I'll
But-
tell
but if-
you,
but-
in,
But if we were to change the definition of rear yard to allow the shed in the side then, would that resolve that issue?
not necessarily.
No, okay.
Not necessarily.
What are you guys finding?
I'll tell you, in my own house,
Yeah.
I look at my neighbor who has her shed in the right place, 25 feet in, 55 feet in. It's in the middle of her yard.
Yeah.
Why do I need to look at that as opposed to it was closer to my yard? Imagine the screening I now have to her yard.
Yeah, but
you
now
know?
you're looking over the screening and you're seeing it in the middle of her yard, more or
There's
less.
just a fence between us. I'm
Yeah.
seeing it in the middle of her yard. And again, it's where it should be.
Yeah, yeah, but obviously it's more than 100 square foot or whatever
Right,
yeah.
right. It's-
So at that point, we consider it a structure, not a shed. Now it's become a structure because of the
Well,
square
it's-
footage, and that
it's-
changes the rear line
It's a shed,
setback.
it's not a garage.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
yeah.
shed, so.
So sheds up
We
to a
look
certain
at-
size, you're saying should be closer to the rear line and sideline?
We look at
You think?
anything
Yeah.
that's put up as a structure in our interpretation
Right.
of what a structure is. So even a 10 by 10 shed or smaller.
Yeah.
then we look at it as a structure. They just don't need a building permit for that
Right.
structure if it's all limited to one.
Yeah, well, as per New York State Building Code,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but we still look at it as a structure, which you have to meet the setback
Mm-hmm.
requirements. And most people want to stick their sheds in that back corner. That's
Right.
hidden from everything.
Or the side.
And matches
Yeah.
the guy behind you. That's where he has his shed.
Yes.
But whether that's more appropriate is the question, you know? A lot depends on how big these, some people call them sheds that are 20 by 30. I
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
don't
that's a
get
little
that.
bit, yeah.
Because it's all their toys.
Yeah.
Didn't they change the law a couple years ago? I don't know that we ever updated. To a size of a shed could be up to a 12 by 12 or 10 by 12? It's the state code? 12 by 12.
You don't need a building permit if it's less than that.
Right.
It used to be 10 by 10 and then it went to
Right,
12 by
12 by
12.
12 by 12.
that's right.
So maybe that's how you could track it, that if it doesn't require a building permit, then you can have it closer.
Well, we do have that right now.
Yeah, but
It's
most
still
of the
25
sheds were
feet.
being asked for a 12 by
So,
16,
let me
12 by
just-
20. They're large sheds.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, we ask, what's the use of it? And it is appropriate things you don't want
yeah.
necessarily people leaving out in their yards.
Right, right.
And then that's usually the case they make when they've already put it in and, well, I keep this in this area, you don't want it in my yard.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Snowmobiles, the triathlon,
Yeah,
triathlons, motorcycles.
So what would you suggest? A lesser setback for sheds of a certain size? I would think.
I mean, I think putting in a side yard will help.
Side height.
Lesser
Less
setback,
that.
particularly if a neighbor's in agreement, with it, but I don't know how you necessarily
Yeah,
ask
that's
that
always an
ahead of
issue,
time.
yeah, yeah.
But particularly for the smaller lots, like we're starting to see a lot of issues for Four Corners now
Yeah,
come
yeah,
up.
sure.
We always have Worley Homes where,
They
they're-
have those
they
strange
just have smaller
undersized.
lots.
Yeah,
And when you take in consideration where their septic is,
they
they've got
are
nothing
limited.
left.
Yeah, yeah.
Their
yeah.
rear yard, really, the setback sometimes takes them to their actual deck.
Why wouldn't
So-
we make the rear setback the same as the side yard setback? Would that, that would avoid having the shed come in 50 feet, but you'd still have a 25-foot
Yeah, maybe 10
buffer
by 10.
or
Yeah,
whatever
Yeah,
the.
whatever.
Sometimes the 25 feet is not necessary.
Well, I don't know if
Yeah.
25
Yeah.
is the right number
Right.
either, but why not have
Yeah, it
the
should be the
rear
same,
yard and the
so-
side yard have the same setback, whatever that setback?
You want
Yeah.
to be able to maintain around it
But you
Right.
can do that.
without encroaching on your
Your
neighbor to
neighbor.
do that, which I agree, and you want to be able to mow behind it, but
You don't want the
unfortunately, then when it's too little and they're not seeing it.
They are not
actually,
really
The flip side
maintaining
of
it,
it is
yeah.
what they start putting behind it, because, well, now they don't have to look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
And we do, so we have to be careful about, so I'm thinking more like 10 or 15 feet.
Yeah,
Because
I
then
would
it's
say.
not in the middle of the yard.
But would you have the side and the rear setbacks be the same?
I would.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense
that's-
to me
Right,
as well.
particularly on small lots.
Okay.
Do we require any natural screening between the two properties?
Require it? No.
If the board sometimes puts conditions, if
Right.
they're going to grant the variance, they'll say it has to have a fence or screening or something like that. But it's
Right.
not required as of right, straight out.
If a neighbor specifically comes and has some concern, we'll ask, will screening help? And we usually get the applicant to agree to put some screening, especially on a flag lot.
Right, because they will avoid futures. I mean, if you have two neighbors that get along now, fine.
Right.
Somebody sells the house, now all of a sudden they come running and says, well, I don't like it. So probably put something in place when given the okay, would eliminate more addicts for them.
The
Well,
dilemma
if
is what
it's legal
happens.
when it's put in and then they sell it,
Right.
then there's no one that can raise an objection.
Right.
The problem arises when they're put in without the benefit of approval.
Right.
That neighbor sells and there's a new neighbor, or they have a dispute, then right away they say, that shed's not.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where-
That's more often the case.
But we'll toy around with a few things, we can always see
Yeah.
what other communities do.
Okay.
Some places have that the
I think we
shadow
gave
of the
enough
shed
work.
can't be.
All right, anything? Yeah. Yeah, is
They're not
there?
going to invite us back for another 5 years.
I hate to say this, I hope you guys weren't up to 12:30 the other night working on this.
That was the last.
This is
that was our
okay,
agenda, was
well,
the discussion,
Yeah,
yes.
we didn't stay up till that end.
We
so.
wanted to be prepared.
It was a lot shorter than it took to
Yeah,
tell you.
yeah.
You must have one more to make the top 10.
That,
No, I think
I
that's
think we
it.
covered.
All right, well, we'll certainly take a look at this. You guys are considered the option of the second Tuesday, or the fourth Tuesday being an optional meeting night. We'll take a look at what we need to change to make your lives easier. Also, building department, zoning, facts, frequently asked questions, that's a great idea. We'll get that on the website. And maybe we'll do a little presentation on Channel 22, talking about, okay, you're getting a pool, and we will look at, if we have to, unfortunately, it appears we're going to have surveys if you get a building permit for a pool. You're going to have a survey, because this just can't continue, so.
Right.
All right.
Now, how many of your meetings go what you call late?
Not many.
I mean, we had a whole several months in a row, maybe
Well,
more
you're
than
averaging
several,
about
got there
9:30, 10
quick.
o'clock usually.
We even had some at 8:30, 9 o'clock for a while.
Yeah, we're regularly before 9 o'clock, done.
I think that's the exception.
Yeah.
I think you're not giving yourself enough credit. I think you have bigger meetings than that.
Once you make
We
all those
could-
changes.
Well, yeah, that's
Once
true.
a month
It
will
is,
be
but you'll
fine.
be home at 7.
Right, yeah. I mean, again, when you have a big topic, like a cell tower, or something, that's when we go.
That's when you
But is
know.
that,
No.
but is that just because there's too much stuff on the agenda on nights like that? Do you think there's a way
That's
to
just
break
because
it up?
that one
because of that.
topic can go 2 hours.
Yeah,
All right, the vet hospital the other night went 2 hours.
yeah,
And then everybody else is then getting upset because we had one couple or group of people that left at one point. We sat here for all these hours and,
yeah.
the
It's
the
not fair.
applicant for that particular application didn't even show up.
Yeah.
And they didn't know that ahead of time, and we didn't know that ahead of time.
Yeah.
So,
So it's not fair to them.
no, it
Yeah.
really isn't,
Yeah.
so.
All righty.
So you think it's just a scheduling type thing?
Well, when you see
For
the big
bigger
ones, yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can put those on a separate night, or that'd be
Or
a great
move them
idea.
to the later.
What?
And have the shorter public
I'm
hearings
trying, I think
first.
we did that once before, when we had the kennel.
Up on the mountain?
We did have a special.
Local
Yeah.
It was
road.
5 hours.
Yeah,
And it took, it was
Yeah.
5 hours.
yeah.
And I got criticized because they went through it, and the next time there, they started all over again. I said,
Yeah.
"But I heard this once. It's screwed
Yeah.
up."
Kennels,
I got a general question for the board. If a project comes in front of you more than once, and, the community addresses certain issues, more of the same issues over and over, at what point does the board really need to entertain more meetings rather than give a decision or render a decision?
It all depends. Some of our applications also involve the planning board, and so if the planning board isn't to an appropriate stage yet, or we had one the other night where the architectural review board hadn't completed their work, we can't close it if another board, like the gas station, we're not
Yeah.
going to be able to close until a nec deck is issued by the planning board because
Right.
they declare themselves lead agency. So we may need to leave the stewards open because
Yeah.
the planning board hasn't done their action.
yeah,
Or
So-
we're waiting for legal issues.
Right.
yes.
We have one that's been
Oh,
going for
the
over,
title search for.
over a year.
Yeah. Right.
Over a year.
But when it comes for a variance for a permit, and, the community has had various opportunity to voice their opinions, and many times it's the same opinions. And my question is, at what point do we still bring the community back to address the same stuff, even if they got an answer?
Well, I think that's an education problem, because I think the public has to understand that if they get up at a public hearing and they make a statement, it becomes part of the record.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be that it's repeated each
Right.
and every time. And I think many people, residents come in, they're very nervous and anxious, and some people have very strong feelings one way or the other. And you see that in all communities. They get up and they feel the more people that can say the same thing, the more of an impact it makes on the whichever board, the planning board, zoning board.
I mean, we're going to be polite. I mean,
Yeah.
person A gets up and says something, and then person B gets up and says the same thing. We usually let
You're going to let them, yeah.
But also with the cell
But
tower.
it's usually, I'm sorry, it's usually not a big deal. It really isn't. We haven't had a problem.
When we considered the cell tower, we were very clear, we don't need to keep hearing the same thing over.
Yes, yes,
As far
yes.
as keeping a consideration also for whoever comes in front of a board, it costs them money to come back, a few times and really answer the same questions. So I would like to see some board members really at one point say, well, this has been addressed already. We should really move forward with something new rather than the same, rhetoric questions being asked over and over again. Because, if you got to bring the specialists to the meeting, they get paid by the hour. So,
I don't think
and
we
bring them over and over.
Yeah.
I think the cell tower, that happened, but
Right.
there was a lot of information.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of our other applications, they don't usually go past 2
Yeah.
times, so we
Yeah.
have the public hearing going.
Yeah, I think that's more of a planning board issue than zoning board.
Well, yeah, because usually with the zoning board,
There's very few
Very few
professionals coming
professionals that
anyway.
come.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
and they're more taking evidence in, so you can't close. So if something comes up when a property owner is making their application to their statement to the board, and they'll ask a question, do you have this, do you have that? They say, well, yeah, but not with me. They have to keep the public hearing open in order for that to be
produce that.
considered by the board. So in that way, you're kind of helping the applicant.
Right. I mean, the other
Good point.
evening, we had Guardian Self-Storage on, they're on for an interpretation. We would gladly have closed the public hearing. They keep bringing their attorney, but it's at their request that they keep asking us to adjourn the public
Oh.
hearing, so.
They know they're going to lose.
And also, it's difficult because, my hat's off to you, it's, everybody who comes in front of you is in the wrong. They're, they're not in
They're not in
compliance with the
compliance.
code, right? So I couldn't do what you do, but it's hard because you have to interpret and look, and every situation is different, and you have to make the proper decision, and thank you.
Yeah,
for
but you guys
all
do a great job.
Thank you.
All righty, anything else? Marty, now, I gave a speech before that says that there's no public input at a workshop meeting, even for you, Marty. Even for you. Can you call me tomorrow? No. Who's it, to the zoning board?
Yes.
Well, they're going to leave in just a minute. Norm, would you take a moment to speak with Marty before you leave?
They're servants of the public, so they...
Yes, they are, and they're very good servants, so, great. All right, well, thank you very much, and if you would stop and just chat with Marty before you go, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
And,
I want to chat with you.
oh, okay. But my problem, what's that?
2 minutes.
Well, see, my problem with this, Marty, is like I say, at a workshop, it's, you know what I mean?
Go over and ask him his questions.
Go ask him to go ahead. Come on. Norman's going to talk to you, and then I'll come over and talk to you. Let's chat about it outside, Marty.
No, he wants it more for public record.
It's something that everybody has to hear.
Oh, one of those. Can you hold it for the next meeting? Oh,
Just when he says have 2 minutes.
Marty, you're going to break the rules.
I don't care.
I know, but I try not to break them, Marty.
You don't break the rules. Yeah, no. But it amazes me how 6 or 7 people can have this much power and tell me what I can do.
That's your comment?
That's one
Yeah,
of them.
yeah. Oh, okay.
Zoning is about protecting the neighbor.
Where I can't have any chickens. We had a law where you could have 12 chickens. 12 chickens in this town. What happened to it?
Okay. And if I may answer that, now, not for the public, but in June of 1963, the town of East Fishkill adopted zoning regulations. Zoning regulations specifically identified uses of your property. I used to be deputy zoning administrator, and all due respect, I would go out to a property, and I'd say to the people, you can't have chickens. And they would say to me, you cannot tell me what I can do with my property. Unfortunately, because we have adopted zoning in 1963, we can tell you, but we always try to work with you, we try to educate you. Chickens must have been an issue at some point. We're trying to address the law so we can relax the laws on chickens. Roosters still seem to be a problem, and I remember roosters were always the problem. It was never the chickens. But well, see, that's see where you get to the problem. So people say, but we did adopt zoning back in '63, and that identified usages, different properties, residential, commercial, and all that. So, okay, please do. I'll bring my rooster.
You gotta get silent.
You're gonna put a pool in, where are you gonna get the water from? Ground?
Or they buy it. I know the Tronsolito will just deliver it too.
Right.
Okay, well, then my well
No, we're always cognizant of. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming and appreciate all your good work.
Marty?
Have a good night.
And now I have a list of things that we're going to do to hopefully make your lives easier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Starting with chickens.
Good night.
Good night. All righty. Very good. I think they do a terrific job. And this is the thing, that when there are a lot of variances, you need to take a look at your laws to see if there's anything we can change or need to change. So we will definitely do that. Now, first on the item for discussions, we want to discuss a little bit the Hillside Lake Concept Plan. A few months ago, I received a request from the Hillside Lake Board. It was a letter. It had 3 signatures on it. It requested a meeting of myself, Councilman Marinero, and the town engineer. I thought it best to have the whole town board involved, so I requested the town board. We set it for a workshop. It wasn't a workshop night, but it was Thursday night. I think it was probably in April we had the meeting. Excuse me. And the topic was brought up about Hillside Lake. Basically, the concept was to turn Hillside Lake into a recreation facility. So we had some discussion about that night, and then Councilman Marinero, I know at the last workshop, you made some statements about that meeting that some of our members of this board disagreed with. So would you tell us a little bit about your thought on this concept, where they're going to go with the Hillside Lake project, if you would?
Well, I remember when we all sat with the board and yourself, and they expressed the idea that if the town would take over the Hillside Lake Park and make it into a recreational area where, you could have basketball courts, you could have, a bike run around the lake, or whatever else the town really deemed necessary that the recreation department needs. I thought that their request was to really do away with the park district the way it is now, and that was basically what their request was at the time. So.
Okay. And you think that was a good concept?
Well, based on the information that they supplied to the town, having something in that part of the town would really bring that area, would revamp that area. There are 400, 450 families with children. So it's not really up to me. The whole town board has to decide
Yeah.
whether
I
or not.
think also we have to, as we discussed that night, we had mentioned, and I had mentioned to some of the people from Hillside Lake, we have to know what Hillside Lake wants as well, the entire community. I think it's very important.
Yeah.
Because I certainly, I was interested in the idea, but I would like to hear it from all of Hillside Lake
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. And then I'm sure down the line, it's about meetings
Yeah.
and whatnot, but I think it's important to get everybody.
On the same page here. Oh, absolutely. One of the things I was going to say, I do believe we recommended that they go to the rec board because they're talking about turning this into a recreation facility and talk to the rec board. Did they go to the rec board meeting?
No.
I know I think we've had one or two since that meeting.
We've had one.
One? Okay.
We have more coming up.
Okay. So that would be appropriate, that they would go to the rec board and see if the rec board deems this an
Right.
area that should be.
I have mentioned it to members of the rec advisory
Okay,
board.
okay. And then the question comes down, I know you said you wanted to make a priority of dissolving the special park district.
That
You
was
said
one
that.
of their requests. There was
Yeah, but you had
priority
said that
one.
a while back, too, I believe, that you wanted to make it a priority to dissolve the special park district?
That's what their request was, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they put it in writing that
Okay,
they would like to see the park district dissolved.
okay. I remember you said you wanted to make that a priority also. So I was just curious about that, if that would be something that should be looked at.
I mean, it's definitely something that, excuse me, they have addressed. I mean, they have addressed in private with the different council members in the private meetings that they had. That some of the meetings went for 2 hours. I attended some of them, not all of them. And I think the same idea was really addressed on all the meetings. That the consensus was that they wanted to dissolve the park district and create some kind of recreational park for the town. Now, that's something that we have to consider. You know, I personally would like to see a little bit more communication between the board. I know I'm the liaison, but, you know, if there is a little bit more communication with the board of Hillside Lake and the community, I think we can move forward. If they want to see the town, the town board likes to discuss the matter with the community, we could have a special meeting. And really hear what the community has to say about this.
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to what you said, Tom, was that Hillside Lake Board should go back to the community and see what the community's feeling is?
Or I would like to hear what the rest of the Hillside Lake community have to
Okay.
say about that. And, you know, to push it even further, to help revitalize that, like you were saying, I think, to be honest with you, and I don't need to bring up the sensitive subject, but I think the grant would go a long way to that.
Oh, absolutely.
And then to see what we can do and incorporate some sort of recreational facility into that, and if it can be done, because I'm sure there'll be guidelines that we're going to have to follow for the grant.
Well, that brings us back to the grant. Hopefully, we're going to get the grant, will be approved. If the grant is approved, I think that would, I mean, if you're looking at rehabilitating Hillside Lake, we're probably looking at a $3 million project. So if that was the case, I think our grant was like $2.2 million or something like that. So that would go a long way towards helping revitalize the lake. But if we don't get the grant, and it is, the councilman said to, you know, if he wanted to dissolve the park district, my concern has always been that, you know, the impact of the taxpayers at large, the town taxpayers. And I don't think that would be appropriate. I think that the town taxpayers pay taxes. Hillside Lake has been a special park district for as long as it's been in existence. So to dissolve the district, I wonder what the impact would be to the taxpayers. That's not something I think I would support, and I know, Councilman, that you said you thought that would be a priority. Anybody, any other thoughts? Any thoughts on this?
Big questions I'd have were the ones that I kind of asked that night, and we do have legal counsel. Tom is here tonight, so I might be able to answer them, because that's one thing we said we had to get back to. What would it take to eliminate the park district? What kind of votes and
Well, several years ago,
legislation?
I offered my opinion, which I think was rejected by some members of the community. And so, in light of the request that has been made, I've asked our bond counsel
Speak to
to
the
give
microphone, please.
an overview to see if he would verify, but basically I'll repeat what I said before. In the town law, there's a section in the 200 section that is entitled the dissolution or consolidation of special districts. A park district is a special district. And the language of that section dealing with park districts allows the town board to abolish a park district if it has not acquired property, nor has it ever levied a tax for recreational purposes. So that being said, we know that the Hillside Lake District owns a lake and property, the beach and whatever else, and there has been a levy. So that power does not exist for the town board on its own. So then what I did was I did further research, and I found a 1978 opinion of the state controller, which says that a special park district can only be dissolved by an act of the state legislature, special act of the legislature. So then, in furtherance of that, if you look at section I think it's 202 of the town law, which gives you the right to set up districts. This legislature has in there several sections where they have granted authority to town boards, primarily in Long Island, to abolish park districts. And the reference in the statute is upon the terms and conditions as presented. So what usually happens when you want a special act of the legislature is you would have to come up with a plan. And with parkland, as we all know, it's protected by the state constitution, and a town board cannot sell or dispose of parkland without specific approval of the state legislature. So in this case, you're not selling it to a private party, et cetera, but you want to dissolve the park district and allow it to become part of the townwide recreational parklands. So I don't believe the legislature is going to have a problem with that, but you're going to have to submit a plan, and the way a special act goes is the town comes up with a proposal. It is sent to the representatives in the Assembly and Senate representing the area. They then introduce it into the legislature. It is then, it's called a home rule message, because the state of New York is a home rule community, or state rather. So then, once that's introduced in the legislature, if there are sponsors for the bill, it is then forwarded back by the clerk of the legislature to the town board for you to formally adopt a home rule request message, which is, yes, this is what we agree that we want. It then goes back to the state legislature. If it passes both houses, it's then signed by the governor, and that law would then give you the right to dissolve the park district and transfer the property to the townwide parkland. So that's kind of the process. As I said, I've asked bond counsel, who's a municipal expert, to review that. I've discussed it with them. I think they're of the same mind, but they're going to, research it a little bit more to make sure. So that, and in my prior experience with this in other communities, I worked on the transfer of a water filtration plant from a county water district to a joint waterworks that's part of 3 towns working together. And in that case, the big discussion from the state legislature for the special act was, should there be a referendum of the people in the county water district? So one issue that's going to have to be addressed to the satisfaction of the state legislature is whether or not the people in Hillside Lake should actually have a vote to approve the dissolution of the district. I'm not saying that's going to be mandated, but the state legislature has leans heavily towards allowing the residents of particular areas to decide things. So that, I hope that's not too complicated, but that's in a nutshell kind of the process.
So you would have to go to the people of Hillside Lake?
You have to come up, well, I think even before you go to the people, you have to have a plan. And the plan would be, this is our concept, is we're going to ask for permission to abolish the park district. This is what's going to happen to the facility. Because I think if I were a resident of a district and you now said you're going to make that a town park, well, what are you going to do here? What, how's it going to be working? So you answer all those questions and then come up with some sort of a plan and then send it up and request for the permission.
Would the town have to vote on it? Because what would happen is if you dissolve the park district and there's any expenses to the lake, be it rehabilitating the lake or just whatever expenses that would be borne by the taxpayer of the town of East Fishkill now, correct?
Right.
So would there be a vote of the town, the taxpayers?
The way that there would be a general vote, as
Yeah.
with anything, whenever a town board decides to borrow funds. So if you had to borrow funds for that, that borrowing resolution is subject to permissive referendum when the people of the town can say, hey, before it becomes effective, we want to have a vote on it and approve it. So in that regard, it could trigger a referendum.
Okay. All right.
So we could vote to send it to the state without a general referendum. But we've got to have a final concept
Right.
of what we want
Right.
and have Hillside Lake vote on it
Right.
before, and then we can make a
Then we
decision.
can send it to the legislature?
Or you can do it
You
prior
can do,
to the vote.
the only vote you could have in the park district without the special legislation would be an advisory vote. It wouldn't be a formal vote, okay? In order to have the vote of the people in the park district, that would have to be in the bill that the state legislature enacts saying, okay, you can dissolve it if the people approve. Because
there will
right
be-
now, you don't have to, I'm sorry.
And there will be the people who will sell lake, correct?
Usually, in my experience with
In
the
the
water
district.
districts, people within the water districts.
Okay, so now, if you were to dissolve the park district, then what would happen? Councilman, do you have any thoughts on what the plan was for that?
I believe that all council people in this room will be sat in those meetings. Maybe you guys could share some information, what was discussed in those meetings?
What did you, what?
Whatever the town supervisor just asked now.
No, I just asked, what was the plan as far as if the district was dissolved?
Well, we have to sit down and really, I just finished saying that it would be a recreational area.
Recreational park, okay. And so it would have to be paid for then by the town at large, by the taxpayers of the town
Now,
of
you
East
keep on
Fishkill?
rehashing who's going to
Yeah.
pay for it, John. I think
Yeah.
we went over this over and over again.
No, I'm asking, my question is, who's going to be paying for it?
I don't own the property, so I can't really rule on that, who's going to be paying for what. This is East Fishkill, part of the town of East Fishkill,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not up to me to say who's going to pay for what.
No, I'm asking if you...
It's a plan that
it's
we should come
dissolved,
together
it's-
with the advisory board of Hillside Lake
Mm-hmm.
and the community.
I would like to just know the impact on the taxpayer of the town of East
I
Fishkill.
have
if we
no
decide-
idea of the impact.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Okay.
I'm not an engineer, I'm not an accountant,
No, I'm just asking.
so
would
I
we-
really don't know what, we have an idea that it's been thrown around, it will be a couple of $1 million. You know it, and everybody else on the table knows.
The remediation of the lake would be around, what do they say, 3?
$3 million, something like that?
Right, John, a
Yeah.
few
No, I was
months
just
ago.
curious, if you dissolve the district, what were the plans to be
A
paying
few
for
months
that?
ago, you wanted to acquire Lake Walton property and suggested to the board to bond for that money. I don't know why you're questioning me, where would the money be coming from?
No, I'm asking you, you said you wanted to make a priority to dissolve the special park district, and I'm just curious about where the funds would be coming then to
I
do the
think
project.
that you're putting words in my mouth.
No, you said
It's
that-
not my priority, it was requested by
No, you
the
said that at a
citizens
couple meetings
and the
ago.
Hillside Lake Board. It
No,
was my
no,
priority.
you'd said that a couple meetings ago, and I was just curious where the funds would be coming then to do the project.
Like all funds will come if we have a rec fund,
Hmm?
like you suggested when you wanted to purchase the Lake Walton property, and some council people also suggested that
We looked into it.
the
Just
funds
as-
for recreation would be available. So I guess if it's a recreational issue, we have those funds over there that could be used for that.
We would look into it and we could do the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, but I believe we looked into it and we decided it was not financially viable, too. That was the end result of that. Correct? So $3 million, we don't have $3 million in the rec fund. So, I don't know, Mark, when we talk about some of our bonding issues for some of our projects, $3 million, I'm just curious, what is, I don't know what that'd be, 10, well, we'd have to figure
think
use
it's-
for the probably useful life.
Yeah, it's
And all that.
probably 10 or 15 years. There's a little uncertainty.
Yeah.
So it's probably about 280 to 380,000 a year.
For, say, a 15-year bond for something like
For
that.
15 would be about 280.
Okay, all right, just curious. So, well, I'm hopeful we get the grant, I'll just leave it at that. If we get the grant for $2.2 million, so it'll help a lot as far as, remediation of the lake. And we'll see where it goes from there. I would be a little hesitant to take on the Hillside Lake project with the town taxpayer till we find out if we have the grant. And then if the rec board thought it would be a recreation facility, that would be something to be viable. I think I'd like to hear their input too.
Has there been any other information about the grant and when they could possibly give us some sort of...
We're waiting for,
Any more info on the grant?
we're waiting. We were told when we submitted the grant, it was going to be from 30 to 90 days, and 90 days is on June 20th. So hopefully we'll be getting an answer on that soon. The grant, it's a federal grant. It comes from the Superstorm Irene money. That was it all comes from the taxpayers. I'm sorry, what's that? It comes from, it's a national grant though, so it's not like the official taxpayers, it's everybody in the country paid into this. It's, excuse me, this is here where we go, where we get out of this. We're having work session here, and this is what I said before, Marty, I hate to do this because this is what it entails. Okay. Okay, very good.
This is the second time we've fielded questions from the audience. And I'd like
I'm sorry, we're having a workshop meeting here, sir.
to understand that.
If we're having a workshop meeting here, so, as I said in the beginning. Okay, very good. So we'll take a look. If we get the grant, it'll be very helpful as far as remediating the lake. If we don't, then it'll take some further thought.
Yeah, but I really don't think the remediation of the lake, it is part of the concept. But I'm not, if you listen to what our attorney just said, that is not going to tell us whether or not we want the lake. And that's not going to allow the state to even say, yes, you want it. You need a concept of what's going to happen over there. Not only with what we're going to do with the remediation money, but are we going to throw a soccer field over there? We're going to put an ice rink over there? We're going to put a roller dome over there? Or we're going to put a Ferris wheel over there? I don't, whatever it is we're going to do, that's what the state's going to want to see, that we got to agree to. Not us, but also Hillside Lake's got to agree to.
Yeah.
Are you going to reroute all the traffic in there? Are you going to sit there and,
Good point.
The state's going to want all that.
Yeah, you're going to have traffic
in order-
considerations then, too.
The
That's
state's
very
going to want
true.
that, but the Hillside Lake, everybody that's in that district has a vote. And they're going to have to see that before that can even get to, I mean, we need a design for the.
Master plan.
We need a master plan for Hillside Lake.
It sounds like the first step would be to talk to the rec board to see how that concept
Right,
develops
kind of get a
there,
kind of get a layout of what's there, what's available, what the rec thinks if they can do anything with it, with them and the engineer, and then bring that back to us.
Well, I like what Scott thought when we had that meeting. He said just about the same size as Leetown.
Right.
So you
but
could have a Leetown facility there, and I think that would be a very, very nice use of that property.
Maybe if we get a topographical view of what's, free, free space.
We can do a conceptual.
And conceptual, and give that with the rec a little bit, and they meet, and then get back to us, because I think we're pounding our head against the wall that we don't even know
if the rec.
Any one of the first three questions is available.
Yeah.
Number one, we need the grant money. Number two, we need the concept of a plan. Because then you can go to the people and say, hey, well, we could figure out a ballpark price too, but then you see where you really want to go.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to get the input from the Recreation Board.
Oh, I think you need,
And
I think you need that.
Yeah, absolutely, so. All right.
So if we have some steps in place right now, Peter, as you're saying, is have a concept to put together and present it to the rec board and also to the community of Hillside Lake?
I think you needed the rec board first, and then after they talk, it's got to go to Hillside Lake, yes. That'd be my opinion.
Or maybe both at the same time, so that everybody gets an
Yeah.
idea where we want to go.
Right. I'm fine with that, but you need a topographical view of what's free, what's available, however you want to word it.
Or we'd be filling in the lake part.
Yeah, but what realistically would be getting filled in, and, because you might not end up with anything. And then realistically, the other thing, you talk about the walking trail. If a walking trail goes around that lake, is there got to be a fence around the lake, or?
Well, the
what
walking
does the
trail was
state
actually
say?
a problem, because what the grant's going to do, we're trying to expand the water volume of storage in the lake, so that we had issues with the walking trail, I remember that.
Because we're going to lose volume.
Yeah, so we have to be careful with that
Right,
aspect of
but
it.
if there's a walking trail around the lake,
Then
in
people
the
are
same
going to want a
token,
fence.
I'm going to
And
walk,
then
I'm going to walk
also-
by Tom's property and Scott's property, and take my water bottle, I'm going to throw it in his yard, and is he going to get mad, or do I have to put a fence up there?
And 5 or 6 years ago, when we had a meeting with the community, that was one of the options discussed.
Yeah.
And many of the homeowners right in the lake were very upset about that, because now they have an unobstructed access right to the lake, the view, and they didn't want people walking through.
But if that, that's got to be part of the concept plan to, you got to know what you're voting on.
Okay.
It's the same thing as with Lake Walton. You need the facts, and.
Yeah. No, we decided
My
not to
opinion.
go forward with that
Yep.
one, and we'll see what happens
But
with
again,
this
the
one.
grant becomes critical, because with the grant, you
Yeah.
have to meet those stormwater requirements.
Exactly.
If you don't get the grant,
You can do whatever you want.
do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, maybe there's a couple variables, I don't know.
A or B possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds
I
good.
think we need more info.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, we have to wait for the response for the grant before we actually put a concept together? Is that?
Unless we put an A and a B.
Yeah.
We do an A and a B.
Why not? We could do
I think it'd be good for the rec board to weigh in and see what their thoughts are on this. Okay, sounds good. And I think, is everybody okay with that? Bring it to the rec board first? Nick, you be okay with that?
Yeah, I spoke to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different families in Hillside Lake, like I said I would. And some people, I brought up the fact that possible recreation, a lot of people like that. Main concerns for most of them was traffic. Like every single one. Where's the traffic going to go? They need a traffic study done, where
Yeah.
parking lots, everything else. They said that the roads can't handle it, they're too narrow, but they said they'd like to keep something maybe smaller, like Lee Town, like you said. Other people say keep it green, because then the upkeep for it is going to cost a lot more money for the town, and possibly, what about if then the park district is dissolved and then is part of the town, then everybody incurs the cost. It would be less for the Hillside Lake community, and they like that, but they didn't like the fact that then there would be everybody going in there. A lot of the seniors, 2 of the seniors says there's a lot of teenagers in trouble, but this would be with any sort of recreation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that maybe that's the best course of action, to go to the rec board, and then it has to go to the community, because they have a lot to say.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So rec board, Tom, you're good with the rec board? Councilman Marinaro, good with the rec board? Put something together?
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. So after they go to the rec board, we'll come back. Hopefully by that time, we'll have an idea if the grant comes through, and then we'll have a better idea of what we can actually do and what the funds will be.
So just one question for
Sure.
clarity. If we go to the rec board and it gets a green light to go beyond that, then I think we should look at the traffic probably immediately. And just
Yeah.
see what that, because that may be the largest impact.
That's going to be
Yeah.
dependent on what you build.
Right, but I mean, you wouldn't go study the traffic first, I wouldn't think, until you get a kind of a concept.
need your A and
Right,
B,
right, right.
You need
Then
your
we're
A
going to have
and
to look at
B.
the traffic.
Scott, would you be able to put something together when we meet with the rec board? Would you be able to put some kind of design together?
Yeah, when's
so
the
that we
next,
could?
we're a little booked right now, but if we have 2 weeks, we have
First Monday.
first Monday. So yeah, I think we have time for that, sure.
Okay.
So if you could put something together so
Yeah.
that when we sit, they have an idea of, and maybe they could make suggestions, and we'll
do
take
that.
it from there.
You could actually take Lee Town and,
Well,
Something like that.
exactly, but the idea of a
That
ball
was an
field,
idea.
soccer field, maybe basketball.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
And maybe some road designs.
But we won't get-
Preliminary.
No, don't get into the road yet.
Preliminary road
yeah.
design.
And just as a
Yeah.
resident of the Leetown area, you do have a parking problem, because people just park on
Yeah.
both sides of the road, make it one way.
Yeah. See, we have that with Wikipedia, too.
When you do these little community parks, you have to.
And you
take
got to be
people
careful
down.
because you can't just have it next to a road, because there's kids next to the road.
Yeah,
You just-
yeah, it gets complicated.
Compounds,
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. So we'll take it to the rec board and get their input. Very good. All right, second on the agenda is discuss the purchase of Beekman Water and Sewer, and the option that they will not develop the 9 holes of the 27-hole golf course they always talk about. Tom, we've been talking about Beekman Water and Sewer and the golf course for almost 10 years now, probably 8 years, back and forth, and the owner said he didn't need 27-hole golf course. He could do with an 18-hole golf course. We had that little issue ongoing. Then we had a chat. Would you just give us some thoughts on that?
Okay. Well, basically, what would be proposed to the town board at your next meeting is to authorize a option agreement. What an option agreement is, it just commits the owner of the water and sewer systems to hold an agreement to sell it to the town for a period of 6 months, so that the town could go through the process of having the community conversations, public hearing, vote, whatever is going to be necessary. It doesn't bind the town. But in discussions, and I'm sure most of the board recall, many years ago, the town hired a consultant to do valuations of the system. Many of the residents were concerned about the operation of the system now that the community is built out. If the current owner leaves, is it going to be as stable, et cetera? So they've asked the town to consider putting together a plan to acquire it and run it as a municipal system. Any of the costs would only be paid by the 280 customers of it. It would not be a town-wide expense. So in going through that process, we also learned from the community two issues that have been long-standing, I'll almost call them East Fishkill myths or, floating around. One was that the owner of the golf course alleged that he could come in, and he did at one time, submit a schematic for an additional 65 or 80 somewhere in there, lots on part of the golf course and diminish some of the course for that. And also on the public side, there was the concept that everyone had that the sewer system could be acquired for $1 at any time by the town just paying $1. So out of all these discussions came a proposal that, first of all, it was concluded that the dollar option, while it was in writing, was not legally enforceable on the part of the town because of what's known as the statute of frauds. It was in perpetuity and et cetera. On the other side, I think we were able to convince the owner of the golf course, which is one in the same group that owns the water and sewer, that they had several legal hurdles to get over before they could really prove that they have any density left. Because anyone who's lived in the town a while would know that in the 80s, I believe it was, the whole Beekman Golf Course, before the Legends was there, it was approved for something like 480 units of housing. And that was a cluster subdivision where all the density from the golf course and all the other land was all placed over where the current homes are. And then that developer went bankrupt and went back to the old owners, the current owners. They then came in and got this configuration approved, which is there now. And the secret process got very murky when I went back. I did this about 5 years ago. And so there was an issue as to, it was no longer a cluster subdivision, it was a regular subdivision, so the argument could be made about the density. But anyway, to get rid of all of that, this agreement would say that if the town goes ahead with the acquisition of the water and sewer system for $2,725,000, which would only be paid for by the 280 customers, that two issues would go away. The dollar option would go away, and he would voluntarily give a conservation easement on the golf course that it can only be used as a golf course. It allows for the clubhouse to be expanded and for accessory uses that are customary with golf course clubhouses to be able to be placed on it. We saw at the other golf course in town over at, in Stormville that they added a swimming pool, which is now a feature of golf courses, so theoretically they could come in and get a swimming pool, but there would be no residential construction on it.
But they'd have to get a survey for that swimming pool.
Yes, exactly. And with some members of the community, this seems to be a satisfactory resolution. I know the town controller has run numbers, and even with the borrowing, it would be an annual adjustment of somewhere between $85 to $100 a year per home, over and above what they pay now. But the benefit to them is multiple. One is part of what they would pay annually. Right now, it's all paid as a water or sewer bill. It's not deductible on their income tax. Part of it now would become a tax, part of a levy, which is deductible, so they get the tax benefit. They get the stability of municipal operation of the water system. U5 would be the quote-unquote water and sewer commissioners as you serve for the other 10 districts of the town. But the process would begin at your next meeting if you authorize the option. It locks in the owner of it for 6 months, that if you do a further resolution and say, yes, we want to go forward, he's bound to honor the terms of the contract. So that's in a nutshell.
Where we are. That's where we are. Yeah, it's been a long road to get here. We've had some disagreements about the value of the water and the sewer, but I think we finally come down to an agreement of what the true values are. Not a big increase in the rates, and it resolves a lot of those outlying issues of the further development, and the dollar option goes away. So
yes.
I think it's a good thing.
Are there any issues with their water, with Beekman Water?
Quality-wise, they have a good quality. We did do an assessment, and there is some, repairs that we're continuing to evaluate and try to put a list together and see what that might entail.
Is it decent volume?
Quantity-wise, they're good, and quality-wise, they're good.
Yeah, they have a
Is there
quantity.
any- When the EPA eventually come in, is there a chance of
Well,
that?
that's a separate issue.
Okay.
But they do have a quantity of water up there, as we know.
What about the sewer
In terms of
capacity?
excess, I believe there is some excess, not a tremendous amount, but there is some excess.
So if they were to build their other 80 homes, how many did you say possible?
They want to do.
They thought they were
80.
65 to 80, but
65
that
to
would go
80,
away.
But they
on
were
this.
homes too, I think they were attached units.
Yeah, they
weren't
were
Remember that?
townhouses.
Townhouses.
Yeah, so obviously that's a benefit. They wouldn't build those houses.
Right.
The neighbors will be
There-
happy.
The current owner felt that there was enough sewer capacity to not only service those additional homes, but also when there was a proposal on Phillips Farm, that with some expansion of the plant, that it would serve that also.
Well, that was my question. Would there expansion needed for those 80 homes?
I can't answer that, but I can say they had an original plant that they abandoned and built a new plant right next to it. So there is that original footprint that if they did need to expand, they have the room to expand.
Okay, so that's a benefit.
Now, the property that's around these towers and the water, the wells, and that all becomes town property?
Yeah, we would,
Or
well, the wells are actually out in the golf course green, but we would own the requisite area around the wellheads. We would have extensive easements for the pipes. The golf course also would be subject to a turf maintenance control agreement that if DEC said you can't use a certain type of fertilizer within X feet of a public water supply, that agreement would be enforceable, and no matter who owned the golf course, they would have to abide by that. And it's all doable, it's all laid out in it.
And they pay for water and sewer?
I don't think they're buying water.
They
They
do?
have the
Where do they get their
clubhouses
water
hooked
from?
up.
The golf course has separate wells.
Yeah, they have separate wells for
And
the
we
golf
did go
course.
through an analysis of that, because the concern was they draw so much water, but apparently,
So they don't use any of our...
who's that?
I believe it's LBG that.
Yeah, and DEC. In fact, one of the interesting things, when we were looking at this originally, the issue came up, well, what happens if they keep watering the golf course? Has it impact the wells? And to our shock, we learned that DEC at that time did not have a regulation that required anyone to get approval for putting in a well for irrigation.
Right. But they've
That has
changed that.
since changed. I don't
If
know
you
if it
pull
was,
more than 100,000 gallons a day, you
Yeah.
have to have a permit.
but that
Yeah.
didn't exist.
That didn't exist.
And
So they had to go through that evaluation.
But they have their
So,
separate wells
But
to
it went
do
through
that.
all the evaluation, and it was proven that there's loads of water there.
So they don't use any water out of their own water plant?
Except the clubhouse and
Right.
that sort of a thing, potable
So
water.
Just the domestic water. Everything else is from a separate set of wells and a
So for
separate
water and all
system.
the fairways is
Yes.
separate, but
Yeah.
the clubhouse and
Is
that's
on the
water and sewer?
domestic system. Right.
Okay. And did we get any feedback from like the local residents over there, whether they want it taken over like we did Sagamore and all these other ones?
I think what we've heard from the ones we've spoken to, they're comfortable with it, because it just clears up a lot
Obviously,
of
that's the
the
next step would be
Yeah.
to have the public
Have to-
meeting.
public
Set it-
hearing,
Get
public
their
meeting.
And this option doesn't bind you to it, it just holds it so
Yeah.
that, it'd be foolish for us to go through the public meetings, have everybody say yes, and
And
then
not
And
have
say no.
Yeah.
goodbye.
Yep. Okay.
So that'll be at the next meeting. We'll have on the agenda to authorize the signing of an option to purchase Beekman Water and Sewer. So, and if you have any other questions about that, if anything comes up, you think of anything, just contact the attorney or the engineer. Talk about quantity, quality, or what have you.
Or
So-
comptroller.
Or the comptroller, talk about the water bills. So, that's good.
Don't call Scott.
All right. Any other questions on Beekman Water and Sewer? Okay. Last thing, and this is not on the agenda, but I did put down, we've had a couple of applications for solar arrays. These are where they take areas of a property and they put out solar panels. They're not on a building. They're laid out on framework off the ground, just off the ground. And we have two applications before the planning board as we speak. So one point, we're going to have to determine what we're going to be doing if we're going to allow solar arrays in the town of East Fishkill. And if we do, what will be the guidelines? Screening, where they can be located on the lot, setbacks, and that sort of a thing. I asked our planner, she printed up this document that we have before us, and it has a lot of good points. And she said you might also want to consider wind power, because wind power seems to be another thing that's coming along, just as solar power is. So we just got that. I got it the day before yesterday, and we just printed it up, and everybody just got it today. So when you get a chance, just take a look at it. But this is a topic that we'll be talking about because we do have applications before the planning board as we speak. All right, and that's that. And I think if there's nothing else under discussion, we'll begin with the liaison reports. Report on the police. My one report on the police was at the last voting meeting. We promoted Officer DeLuca to the position of sergeant, and there's several officers here that night to support him and to congratulate him. And on their way back to the station, one of the officers noticed a black car that they had been looking for, that had been seen at the scene of a few burglaries that we had out by the Lake Walton Brown Road area. Then our police departments actually pulled over this vehicle, found there were stolen items on the floor, and that night they arrested three suspects who were, it appears that they were the people that were committing the burglaries around that end of town. So I'd just like to thank our police department for that. They do a good job. And kind of ironic that everybody was just leaving Sergeant DeLuca's celebration. But that was good. Otherwise, everything is going very well with our police department. That being said, Peter, Highway Department.
We always said when DeLuca got in charge, the problems would be solved. And that worked. Couple things going on over at the highway. They've been updating a lot of the street signs, the ones that got taken out by the winter and weather and everything. Still cutting trees. Drainage work, they're installing a lot of pipes. They're working on some of the deteriorated catch basins for drainage and that have fallen apart over the winter. And believe it or not, they're still sweeping the roads. They've been down to one sweeper from 3 for about a lot over the last 2 weeks.
Why is that?
Because it broke. One of the 2 broke that they've had.
Really?
Been broken a lot.
So now we're
broken more than, but it's up, I guess it's up again. Second one's up, I think.
Really?
So
So
said today,
yeah.
we're back up to 2.
Okay.
They're in Hillside Lake. And hopefully, within 2 weeks to 3 weeks, the whole town will be done.
Okay.
But I haven't seen them on my road yet.
Okay.
Or Elizabeth Drive.
Or Elizabeth Drive.
You know, one question I think that we should look at when we put out our winter bids for next year, when we do for our sweepers, I don't know if we should have and I think all the sweepers in Dutchess County right now are busy, but I don't know if we can find another firm as a backup to who does the sweeping, because when you have 3 sweepers and they 2 break
That's a
down,
good
you're down to
idea.
1.
Yeah.
We should kind of make some kind of arrangements.
We've mostly had 2. We've been lucky to
Have
get
we?
a 3rd one at
Okay.
some points.
Yeah. But we might want to
lost
look
the
at
third one,
having
yeah.
some
Lost that
backup.
in the bid, that they
Yeah,
have to have,
yeah.
they must have,
Backup equipment, or do we get two contractors?
right.
You know, we might want to see what we can do with
I was
that.
thinking if you could advertise points south of here. I know you like to keep the work local, but
Yeah.
if you advertise Maryland or someplace south where, the winter breaks earlier.
Yeah.
And that those sweepers are done earlier.
Oh.
A company might send 3 or 4 sweepers up here and put the guy in the hotel, to get that contract. So maybe
Really?
we need to expand our bid
bidding
radius.
Oh, I never thought of that. That's a
Right.
good idea. How far south, so we'd have to go, we'd have to go,
Not too far.
We wouldn't go to Florida, but.
no.
Delaware,
They probably don't have
Maryland,
sweepers in
someplace
Florida.
where it's warmer.
Yeah,
A month sooner maybe, and you might be able to
Good
get
point,
some.
good point. We're going to be putting together our bids soon, so maybe we'll take a look at that. That's a good, very good
The tree
point.
companies that are down in this area are really from,
Well, they travel, tree companies,
tree
all these companies travel.
They travel
so
Monday through Friday.
Wow,
They load up the trucks, they ship them up here, and they put
Yeah.
guys to work for a month or
Yeah.
8 weeks. They
That's
probably would be interested.
very good idea, because we don't want to have to go through this sweeping problem next year, so, very good. All righty, Councilman D'Alessandro, Planning and Zoning.
Yeah, very busy. 'Tis the season now. Everybody wants applications for pools or whatnot. Our zoning board was here. Everybody knows that, please, if you need a variance for something, you're selling your house, get it in right away, because it's, the agendas are long, and
Yep,
it's,
yep.
you could be bumped to the next meeting, so please get those applications in.
Soon,
Yes, soon.
okay, good. Councilman Franco,
Recreation, the leagues are winding down. There's about 2 more weeks left for all of them, so probably by July, everybody will be done.
Wow.
Very successful year, very happy, so.
The fields look good.
Fields are very good.
Yeah, I
Thanks
know.
to the rec department and everybody else who helped out.
Yeah, looks very good. Good, good. And the autumn season will be starting soon?
Well, I'm sure all the registrations will be coming in.
Yeah,
And we're always
yeah.
looking ahead to the next season.
And football, when does that start?
That starts in the fall. Well, actually, normally in August.
August, I
Yeah,
thought
when they
so.
start
so. Okay,
running around, getting conditioned.
okay, sounds good, sounds good, great. Councilman Marinero, Hillside Lake Special Park District?
Really nothing to report.
Nothing to report?
There is
Okay.
nothing new going on, so
Okay.
basically,
And we'll get in front of the rec board and see what they think, and hopefully, if they say this is a good idea, we'll move forward with
yeah,
that.
that should be
Be a good next step.
the start, yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Thanks.
All righty, with that, I did have just two quick things to say before closing. Julie's Jungle groundbreaking will be held at Lime Kiln. We're very excited about Julie's Jungle, our playground for children of all abilities, and the groundbreaking is set for Lime Kiln Park, Saturday at 11 a.m. Please join us. And our American Legion will have a Flag Day ceremony Sunday behind the library at the Flag Retirement Pit, and it will begin at 7 p.m. So if you can, please be there for that. All that to be said, anything else? With that, the next town board meeting is June 25th, and thank you so much for attending.